Story 17, The Halloween House. When Sarah and Mark Jennings bought the old Grayson place, it felt like fate. They'd been saving for years, hoping for something with character, maybe even a little bit of mystery. The property came up at a county auction after decades of neglect, and no one else seemed interested. The bidding was over before Sarah had even raised her hand a second time. As is, including contents, the auctioneer had said. They'd signed the papers without hesitation. The house sat just beyond town limits, half hidden behind weeping willows and wild ivy. Its sagging porch and boarded windows seemed almost shy, as though it were holding its breath. The locals called it the Halloween House. Sarah remembered hearing about it as a child, how every October it would come alive with glowing pumpkins, shrieking sound effects, and skeletons so realistic that people would drive from neighboring towns just to see. But then the decorations stopped, and not long after, the house's owner, a reclusive artist named Emmett Grayson, vanished. The house sat empty for years. When Sarah and Mark arrived with their moving truck, the air felt heavy with dust and secrets. Inside, the house was a time capsule, furniture covered with sheets, faded wallpaper curling at the corners, photographs of strangers lining the hall. It was unsettling, but fascinating, like stepping into someone else's dream. Mark was charmed by the craftsmanship, the carved banisters, the stained glass windows. Sarah, however, couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching. Every creak in the floorboards sounded deliberate. That night, she dreamed of laughter echoing through the halls, of candlelight flickering against walls streaked red. They spent their first week cleaning room by room. The attic was filled with old costumes, broken mannequins, and boxes labeled Halloween, do not open until October. Mark joked about throwing a big Halloween party like the old days, but Sarah didn't laugh. On the 7th day, they went down to the basement. The air was cooler there, still and heavy. Rows of wooden crates lined the walls, each marked in faded chalk. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like lace, and the smell of dust and rust filled the air. Mark pried open the first crate with a crowbar. Inside was a skeleton, wired together at the joints, still wearing scraps of old clothing and a cracked porcelain mask. "Jesus," he whispered, "these are incredibly detailed." Sarah crouched closer, her stomach turning. The bones weren't plastic. There were fingernails, tiny bits of hair. "Mark," she said quietly, "this isn't fake." He laughed nervously, but when she peeled back a fragment of cloth to reveal a silver ring still on a finger, the laughter died in his throat. They opened another crate, then another, each one the same, human skeletons. Some posed as if mid-scream, others bound or curled into fetal positions. Sarah stumbled upstairs and called the sheriff. Within hours, police tape crisscrossed the lawn. Forensics teams moved carefully in and out, carrying tubs, boxes, and crates. Detectives who had long retired returned, pale-faced, to witness the discovery that finally broke the case that had haunted them for years. You see, between the late 1980s and early 2000s, the area had been plagued by disappearances. Police had scoured forests, drained ponds, dug up fields, but no trace was ever found. The cases went cold. DNA testing confirmed what no one wanted to believe. The skeletons belonged to the people who had vanished decades ago. The serial killer that had hunted the town had hidden his victims in plain sight, dressed them, posed them, displayed them. Neighbors had stood on the sidewalk, admiring the work. Parents had taken pictures with their children. Every scream on Halloween night had seemed part of the show. The story made national news. Journalists camped outside the property. Paranormal investigators called it cursed. The townspeople whispered that Grayson's spirit still lingered in the basement, proud of his art. Sarah and Mark couldn't stay. Even after the police left, the house didn't feel empty. The floorboards creaked at night as though someone were walking the halls again. The basement door refused to stay shut. Sometimes they'd wake to find old Halloween tubs moved, lids slightly ajar, as though someone had been going through them. On the last night before they left, Sarah swore she heard music playing faintly from below, a warped old tune that sounded like a carnival waltz. When they went to look, the basement lights were already on. They moved out at dawn, leaving everything behind. The Halloween house sat abandoned once more, waiting. A few months later, the county listed it for auction again. The description read, "Historic property as is, contents included." And just like before, someone bought it for far too cheap.